welcome chosen ones. There's something deeply unsettling to others when someone they quietly dismissed begins to rise beyond the limits they once assigned to them. It disrupts a hidden expectation, an unspoken agreement that you would remain exactly where they last understood you. People find comfort in narratives of struggle because they are predictable, easy to categorize, and safe to observe from a distance. But transformation is different. When you evolve beyond the version they accepted, it forces them to confront their own assumptions. And in that moment, your progress becomes more than just personal. It becomes a reflection they can no longer ignore. People can easily extend sympathy to those who are struggling. It feels natural, even reassuring. But the moment that same person rises quietly and succeeds without validation, applause, or anyone's permission, something shifts. The energy in the room tightens, conversations soften, and an unspoken tension takes hold. It's not that people resent success itself. That's just the surface-level explanation. What truly unsettles them is when success comes from someone they had already counted out. Because in that moment, it challenges their judgment, their expectations, and the limits they unconsciously placed on you. There's a subtle psychological pattern at play that shapes how people perceive others long before anything actually happens. It's the quiet habit of assigning roles, deciding, often unconsciously, who is destined to rise, who will stay in the middle, and who will never quite break through. These internal rankings aren't spoken out loud, yet they guide how people treat, support, or overlook someone. Over time, these assumptions become so deeply rooted that they no longer feel like guesses. They feel like certainty. And when reality defies those expectations, it doesn't just surprise them, it unsettles the entire framework they trusted. Here's where everything shifts. The moment someone breaks free from those silent rankings, when the one who was overlooked rises without support, without applause, without a safety net, it disrupts more than expectations. It challenges the logic people relied on to understand the world. The mind searches for explanations, trying to make sense of something that doesn't fit the script. And in that gap, tension begins to grow. Because your success, achieved independently, carries a message that can't be softened or dismissed. It quietly proves that the rules they believed in were never as fixed as they thought. It suggests that the framework they trusted to define success was never as fixed as they believed, and that realization can be deeply unsettling. There's an unspoken truth few are willing to admit. Support often comes with invisible conditions. People are comfortable encouraging others as long as those individuals remain within a certain range, just beneath them, where everything feels balanced and predictable. It preserves a sense of order. But the moment that same person surpasses those quiet limits, something shifts internally. The equations they relied on no longer add up, and the emotional response begins to change in ways they didn't anticipate. What was once simple admiration now begins to clash with something far more intense: comparison. And comparison has a way of unsettling the ego, because it forces the mind into questions it never intended to ask. How did they get there? When did they move ahead? What did they understand that I overlooked? These thoughts don't stay surface level. They dig deep. And sometimes, the truth behind them is straightforward, but difficult to accept. While others were observing, discussing, or hesitating, you were quietly putting in the work, building momentum in silence. While others stayed on the sidelines, you were sharpening your understanding. While they waited for the right moment, you moved forward through uncertainty and made progress anyway. And when your results finally surface, the reactions around you start to shift in subtle, revealing ways. Some offer congratulations that don't quite reach their eyes. Others quickly rewrite the past, claiming they always saw your potential. What seems confusing at first is simply people adjusting their narrative to match a reality they never prepared for. It's almost amusing how certain memories suddenly resurface right after the victory, as if they were waiting for proof before existing. Others go unusually quiet, like players realizing too late that the game has shifted and the pieces are no longer where they expected them to be. There's a strange irony in it all. People can watch someone struggle for years and feel completely at ease with that story. But the moment that same person succeeds, curiosity turns sharp and reactions become investigative. It's as if your breakthrough triggers a need to analyze, question, and dissect every step, because your outcome no longer fits the version of reality they were comfortable believing. The first reaction is confusion. How did this even happen? It feels like something must be missing, like a step was skipped. But the reality is far simpler than they expect. You didn't stop. You stayed consistent when no one was watching, and that's what carried you through. What makes your success so unsettling isn't just the outcome. It's the way you achieved it. There was no crowd lifting you, no system shielding you, no constant reassurance guiding your steps. It was built in silence through your own discipline, and that kind of victory speaks louder than anything they can easily explain. It was nothing but discipline, relentless belief, and a mindset that refused to shrink itself to fit the limits others quietly placed around you. A journey like that doesn't just lead to success. It creates a result that challenges perception itself. It makes people question not only who they thought you were, but also the boundaries they've accepted for themselves. And that's why your victory carries a different weight. It doesn't just stand as an achievement. For some observing from a distance, it lingers in their thoughts, pressing against their comfort, forcing them to confront truths they would rather avoid. Before we move on, I would like to remind you to join our growing family by hitting subscribe to Cosmic Chrysalis channel and turn on the notification bell and finally hit the like button. It helps this message reach the people who need it most. You're here because you're ready for a shift, and I want you to officially claim your space in this community. Share this video with a friend and drop the number 222 in the comments to let me know you're tuned in and ready. I love seeing the energy you all bring. Let's jump into point number 1. Number 1, your success shattered the narrative they had already settled on about you. Long before any results appeared, before any visible signs of progress, people had quietly decided how your story would unfold. They placed you in a fixed role, convinced themselves they understood your limits, and moved on as if your path was already determined. But when you rose beyond that script, it didn't just surprise them, it disrupted the version of reality they had grown comfortable believing. It was never documented anywhere, yet it lived clearly in their perception of you. Within that silent narrative, there were boundaries you weren't meant to exceed, lines you were expected to stay behind. They may have never voiced it, but the belief was there, shaping how they saw your potential. In their minds, your path had a limit, a certain level you would reach and no further, a ceiling that defined what your life could become, and anything beyond that simply didn't fit the version of you they had already accepted. This is something people do almost automatically. The mind prefers quick labels because they create a sense of order and predictability in a complex world. Someone becomes the quiet one, the average one, the one who struggles, or the one who always needs support. And once those labels are assigned, they tend to stick. Most people don't go back to question or revise them. They stop observing growth, stop noticing change, and continue interacting with a version of you that no longer truly exists. They expect the future to unfold exactly as they imagined, following the quiet script they wrote in their minds. But when you rise on your own, without their support, their validation, or their permission, you do more than achieve success. You break the narrative they relied on to make sense of you. And that disruption doesn't just surprise them, it unsettles something deeper. Because when a story they believed in collapses so suddenly, it forces them to question not only you, but the certainty they once had in their own judgments. It pushes them to confront a reality they would rather avoid. That they didn't just underestimate you slightly, they misread you entirely. The version of you they confined to a small, predictable space no longer fits what they're seeing. Suddenly, you're operating in a wider arena, moving with a presence they never accounted for. The one they thought would linger in the background has stepped forward, not just catching up, but surpassing expectations in a way that forces them to reconsider everything they once believed about you. For many, owning that kind of misjudgment feels heavier than simply acknowledging your success. So instead of admitting it, the mind shifts into defense mode, trying to protect the ego from discomfort. Some begin to reshape the past, convincing themselves they always saw your potential. Others downplay what you've achieved, as if minimizing it somehow restores their sense of balance. It's not really about your success. It's about preserving the version of reality that keeps them from having to admit they were wrong. Some will go a step further, searching for imperfections in your journey, picking apart details just to soften the impact of being wrong. It becomes less about understanding what you achieved and more about restoring their own sense of certainty. But beneath all of that, the real discomfort isn't rooted in your success. It comes from what your victory revealed, something they never anticipated, something that challenges the way they once measured you, and perhaps themselves. The realization hits deeper than most are willing to admit. The image they held of you was never accurate to begin with. And when that internal version collapses, it doesn't fade away quietly. It lingers in the background, resurfacing every time they see how far you've come. Your presence becomes a constant reminder that the limits they once placed on you were never real. And that kind of awareness doesn't sit lightly. Knowing they underestimated you so completely can stay with them, quietly echoing in ways they may never openly acknowledge. Pause with me for a second, chosen one. If this message is resonating with you so far, or you have found any value, take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. By doing so, you aren't just following a channel, you are officially claiming your seat here at Cosmic Chrysalis. Tap that like button to help this light reach others who are still searching. Now let's return to the message. Number 2, your self-reliance revealed what others quietly lean on. There's something profoundly unsettling about witnessing someone rise without the usual support systems people assume are essential. It challenges the belief that success must come with backing, validation, or a network to rely on. And when you move forward without those things, it doesn't just highlight your strength. It brings attention to the invisible dependencies others have grown comfortable with, but rarely question. Many people are conditioned to believe that advancement only comes with backing, support systems, constant reassurance, the right connections, or someone guiding the way. Without those elements, they assume progress is nearly out of reach, so they organize their decisions, their risks, and even their ambitions around that belief. It becomes the framework through which they navigate life, rarely questioning whether it's truly a requirement or simply an assumption they've grown comfortable relying on. They pause, waiting for the right moment, the right approval, the right people to clear the path ahead. Movement becomes conditional, tied to signals that everything is in place. But then, someone like you steps outside that pattern entirely. You didn't wait for doors to open. You kept moving even when they stayed closed. Without a circle to lean on, without constant reassurance, without a crowd behind you, you created your own momentum. And that kind of progress doesn't just stand out. It quietly challenges the belief that permission was ever required in the first place. You carried the weight of your choices on your own, faced obstacles without a safety net, and continued forward even in complete silence. There was no applause guiding you, no reassurance confirming you were on the right path, just your own commitment. And when that level of independence leads to real results, it reveals something uncomfortable for many to face. It highlights how much of their own movement has been tied to external validation and how often they've waited for others before taking steps they could have taken themselves. For some, that realization lands heavier than your success ever could, because it forces a quiet comparison they didn't intend to make. In that contrast, things become clear. While they were waiting for ideal conditions, the right connections, or the reassurance that everything was aligned, you kept moving with what was already in your hands. No perfect setup, no guarantees, just progress. And that difference, simple as it is, speaks louder than anything they can easily ignore. No fallback plan, no certainty of outcomes, just persistence and the resolve to navigate each step as it came. That contrast becomes a mirror many find difficult to face. Your path reveals that progress isn't always dependent on who stands beside you, but on your willingness to keep moving when no one does. It challenges the idea that support must come first, showing instead that courage often leads the way, and everything else follows. It disrupts the silent assumption that success can only be achieved through connections, validation, or permission. When someone realizes that a path they believed required a crowd can actually be walked alone, it unsettles the foundation of the rules they've been relying on. That kind of realization forces a reevaluation they didn't plan for. Some will respond with genuine respect for your independence, recognizing the strength it takes to move without support, even if it challenges everything they once believed was necessary. They can see, even if they don't say it out loud, the level of strength it takes to create something without relying on anyone else. But not everyone is willing to sit with that realization. Some choose a different response. Instead of looking inward and questioning their own dependence, they begin to downplay what you've done or search for unseen advantages behind your success. It's easier to believe there was hidden help than to accept that you truly did it on your own, not necessarily because they're certain of it, but because it protects them from a harder truth. Accepting your independence would force them to confront something they've long held onto, that the obstacles they believed were immovable might not have been as real as they thought. And that realization shifts responsibility in a way that's difficult to ignore, making it easier to question your path than to re-examine their own. Before we move to the next revelation, make sure you've hit subscribe and the bell icon. This ensures you never miss a single transformative moment on your path. Leave a like to affirm your growth and solidify your place in our community of chosen ones. Your seat at Cosmic Chrysalis is waiting. Claim it now. Moving on to the next point. Number 3, your solitude became evidence that your strength exceeded the structure around you. While most people are quietly molded by the environments they exist in, you found a way to move beyond them. Systems, whether shaped by education, community, work, or family, tend to define limits, outlining what success should look like and how far someone is expected to go. These boundaries often go unquestioned because they're reinforced by tradition and shared belief. But your path showed that those invisible walls aren't as absolute as they seem, and that stepping outside of them is possible for those willing to see beyond what they were told to accept. These systems quietly signal what is possible and what is not, shaping perceptions without ever needing to say it outright. For many, life becomes about staying within those unspoken boundaries, playing by rules that keep everything orderly and familiar. It feels safe to move within what's already defined. But then, someone like you appears. Someone who doesn't fully accept those limits, who moves differently, and in doing so begins to question the very lines others never thought to cross. You chose your own path without seeking validation, without pausing for approval, and without leaning on the systems others depend on. You didn't just advance, you did it by defining your own rules. And that kind of self-directed progress sends a powerful message. To those still operating within the system, it can feel unsettling, because it suggests that the structure they trust isn't the only way forward, and that freedom may have been an option all along. The rules that once seemed unbreakable begin to lose their authority when someone proves they were never fixed in the first place. By rising in solitude, you became proof that true power isn't granted by systems or measured by their standards. It doesn't come from climbing a ladder built by others. It comes from within, from a level of discipline, focus, and self-awareness that operates beyond control and defies prediction. And that kind of strength is difficult for others to understand because it doesn't rely on anything they've been taught to trust. The structures that once seemed solid begin to look uncertain when someone proves they can move beyond them without permission. What was thought to be guiding or limiting suddenly feels less stable in the presence of someone who refuses to be defined by it. That's why your success creates discomfort. It's not the outcome that unsettles them, it's the meaning behind it. Because what you've achieved quietly suggests that the system they trusted may not hold the power they believed it did. The notion that someone can exceed every expectation, bypass the usual rules, and still reach levels others thought were impossible without support begins to challenge everything they trusted. When your journey exposes cracks in the system they relied on to measure potential, it forces a deeper realization. That system was never as flawless as they believed, and in recognizing its limitations, they're also confronted with how much of their own confidence was built upon depending on it. Your solitude didn't just give you independence, it placed you beyond the reach of the system's expectations. While others stayed within predefined paths, you moved in a direction that had no blueprint, no precedent to follow. You built something that couldn't be tracked, shaped, or anticipated by the structures around you. And for those still operating within those boundaries, witnessing that kind of freedom creates a quiet unease because it reveals a truth they can't ignore. That real strength and clear vision don't wait for approval to take form. A quick reminder for the chosen ones watching: hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you stay aligned with every new video we release. Give us a like to help spread this frequency further. You are part of the cosmic chrysalis story for a reason. Make sure you've claimed your place. Let's dive back in. Number 4. Your resilience made it impossible for them to hide behind their own justifications. Many people hold on to excuses like silent protection, using them to soften responsibility and explain inaction. They become comfortable shields, rarely questioned, and often defended. But when someone like you pushes forward without leaning on those same reasons, it disrupts that comfort. It challenges the very narratives they've relied on, forcing a confrontation with truths they would rather keep untouched. They build explanations for every delay: why the start never happened, why success feels out of reach, why circumstances seem stacked against them, why the timing is always off, why opportunities never appear. And these reasons don't sound unreasonable. They feel justified because they're rooted in repeated thoughts, past experiences, and underlying fear. Over time, those patterns become so familiar that they stop being questioned, turning into beliefs that quietly shape what they think is possible. These explanations offer a kind of comfort, allowing people to believe that what's holding them back is real, external, and beyond their control. It keeps responsibility at a distance, but then someone like you moves forward anyway, quietly, without recognition, without relying on others, and without making excuses. And in that contrast, something shifts. Because your progress challenges the idea that those barriers were ever as immovable as they seemed. Your success doesn't simply highlight your own journey. It casts a light on the possibilities others chose not to pursue. It becomes a reflection they can't easily turn away from. In that reflection, the barriers they once relied on begin to lose their strength. The reasons that felt solid start to weaken, and the limits they accepted no longer seem as fixed. What once provided certainty begins to unravel, revealing that those constraints may have never been as permanent as they believed. They begin to see that what they once labeled as barriers were often interpretations shaped by fear rather than absolute truth. It's not that the obstacles never existed, many of them were real. But where those challenges became stopping points for them, you treated them as signals to adapt, to push, to continue. The same circumstances that justified hesitation for others became the very force that drove you forward, turning resistance into momentum instead of limitation. You didn't pause for ideal timings or wait for someone else to make the way easier. You didn't allow hesitation or uncertainty to decide your direction. You moved forward anyway, and that decision to act, consistently and without excuses, is what carried you to where you are now. That kind of outcome can be difficult for others to accept, especially those who have spent time holding themselves back, because it highlights a truth they can't easily ignore. It pushes them to face a reality they've been sidestepping for a long time. The obstacles they blamed may not have been the true limit after all. It brings a quieter, more difficult realization that what held them back was a reluctance to step forward, to take risks, to persist when things became uncomfortable. And coming to terms with that kind of truth isn't easy, because it shifts the responsibility inward in a way they can't easily dismiss. So rather than turning inward and confronting the reality they've been avoiding, some people shift their focus outward. It's easier to question your path than to examine their own hesitation. They begin to pick apart your journey, minimize what you've accomplished, or convince themselves there must have been some unseen advantage behind it, not because they truly understand your process, but because it helps them protect a version of themselves that isn't ready to accept what your success represents. It's not that they genuinely think you took shortcuts. It's that facing their own reality feels far more uncomfortable. Your resilience, your consistency, and your ability to keep going strip away the comfort of the explanations they once relied on. And when those justifications start to weaken, it creates a tension that isn't easy to sit with. Because what your journey reveals isn't subtle. It's direct, and it challenges everything they used to protect their sense of certainty. It stands as a clear and unignorable contrast. While they were still questioning their chances, hesitating and overanalyzing, you were already stepping forward and becoming the answer. That difference doesn't need to be explained, it's felt. And that realization doesn't fade quickly. It lingers beneath the surface, quietly pressing against their thoughts, because it highlights a gap they can't easily justify or ignore. Congratulations for reaching the end of today's video. I would like to thank you for staying until the very end, chosen one. Your presence here strengthens this entire community. If this message resonated, claim it by hitting the like button and sharing it with a fellow seeker. I'd love for you to comment 1111 below to manifest your place among the chosen ones here. Ensure your notification bell is on so you never miss our daily guidance. I am so grateful for you. Have a beautiful day, and may you stay protected and blessed.